He watched his son's fever climb, refusing to call a doctor because it would empty his secret savings account. The number on the little digital thermometer read 104.1 degrees, and it seemed to burn a hole in the quiet, dim room. His wife, Sarah, paced the floor, her face pale with worry. "Mark, this is not normal," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We have to take him to the emergency room. Now." Mark did not look at her. He looked at his son, Josh, whose small body was shivering under a thin blanket. But in his mind, he saw a different number, $47,832. 14. A beautiful, perfect number. The result of years of skipped lunches, old clothes, and saying no to everything. It was their fortress. Their safety. An ER visit, even with their basic insurance, would be a disaster. The co-pay, the tests, the unknown costs, they were a fire that could burn his fortress to the ground. "Let's give him another dose of Tylenol," Mark said, his voice flat. "It's just a bad flu. We wait one more hour." Sarah stopped pacing and stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "One more hour." "Mark, look at him. He's barely awake." But Mark was already moving to the medicine cabinet, his hands steady. He believed in control, in planning. Panic was the enemy. That number in the bank was his victory over panic. The Tylenol did nothing. Josh's breathing became shallow, and a soft, weak sound came from his lips. That sound broke something in Sarah. She grabbed her car keys from the hook by the door. "Fine," she said, her voice suddenly cold and sharp as glass. "If you will not take your son to the hospital, I will. And Mark, do not come with us." The silence in the house was louder than Sarah's shouting had been. Mark stood alone in the hallway, listening to the sound of the car driving away. For a moment, he felt a surge of anger. She did not understand. She did not see the long-term plan. This money was not for him, it was for them, for Josh's future. He was protecting them from the chaos of the world. He walked into his home office and turned on the computer, his hands shaking slightly. He needed to see the number. He logged into his secret account, the one Sarah knew nothing about. There it was, $47,832. 14. Solid. Safe. Real. He breathed out, feeling a wave of relief. But the relief was temporary. The image of Josh's pale face returned. He tried to work, to organize spreadsheets, but his focus was gone. Every minute felt like an hour. He pictured Sarah in the ER waiting room, alone and scared. He imagined the doctors, the nurses, the questions. An hour passed, then two. Finally, his phone rang. It was Sarah. "They readmitting him," she said. Her voice was empty, without emotion. "He had a seizure in the car, Mark. A febrile seizure. Because his temperature got too high." The words hit him like stones. Seizure. The word echoed in the silent house. He had waited, and his son had paid the price. "I'm coming now," he managed to say. He drove to the hospital in a fog of guilt and fear. When he arrived, he found Sarah in a small, private waiting area. She was not alone. A woman with a kind face and a notepad was sitting with her, a hospital social worker. Sarah looked up at him, and there was no anger in her eyes anymore. There was only a cold, empty distance. "They have some questions for us," she said. "They want to know why we waited so long to bring him in." Mark felt the floor disappear from under him. The social worker, a woman named Mrs. Davis, asked gentle questions, but they felt like accusations. Was there any reason for the delay in seeking medical care? Mark mumbled something about thinking it was just a flu. He could not bring himself to look at Sarah. He felt her judgment like a physical weight. After Mrs. Davis left, Mark sat in the hard plastic chair of the hospital corridor, his head in his hands. He had failed. His obsession with saving money had not protected his family, it had hurt them. He felt a presence beside him and looked up. An old man in a volunteer's vest was holding out a cup of coffee. "You look like you could use this," the man said softly. Mark took it without a word. "My name is Arthur," the old man said, sitting down. "I spend my nights here. I see a lot of worried faces." Mark did not want to talk, but Arthur continued. "You know, I worked my whole life at a factory. Saved every penny for a perfect retirement. My wife and we planned a big trip to Italy. We had a folder full of pictures of all the places we would go." Arthur paused, looking at a distant point down the hall. "She passed away from a heart attack 2 weeks before we were supposed to leave. I had all the money in the world, but I had no one to spend it with." The story landed in Mark's chest with a sickening thud. He suddenly saw his own life with horrifying clarity. He stood up, a new resolve hardening his face. He found Sarah and said the words he should have said hours ago. "I'll pay for everything, Sarah. I have money. A lot of money, saved in a secret account." He expected relief, maybe even forgiveness. He saw a flicker of hope. But the hope was a trap. Sarah's face changed from sorrow to a new, sharper kind of pain. "You have money," she whispered, her voice breaking. "You had money this whole time, and you watched our son, you let him suffer, just to protect it." The truth did not set him free. It became the final wall between them. "The social worker thinks we might have neglected him," she said, her voice flat. "Now I think she might be right." Mark was completely alone. Sarah had asked him to leave the room so she could be with Josh. He walked through the sterile, quiet halls of the hospital until he found an empty chapel. He sat in the last row, staring at nothing. Arthur's words came back to him. "I had all the money in the world, but no one to spend it with." He had been so focused on building a lifeboat that when the storm actually came, he refused to let his family inside. He had been saving the lifeboat instead of the people. In that small, empty room, Mark finally understood. The fear of being poor had made him poor in a much deeper way. He took out his phone, his hands completely steady now. He logged into the secret bank account one last time. He looked at the number, $47,832. 14, and felt nothing. No pride, no comfort. Only disgust. He navigated to the hospital's payment portal. The estimated bill for the admission and treatment was already there, a shocking, brutal number that would take almost everything. Without hesitating, he typed in the amount and hit confirm payment. He watched the balance of his secret account drain away until all that was left was a few dollars and some cents. The fortress was gone. And for the first time in years, he felt free. He walked back to Josh's room and found Sarah standing by the window. He did not make excuses or promises. He simply held out his phone, showing her the payment confirmation receipt. "It's gone," he said quietly. "All of it." "I'm sorry, Sarah. Not for the money. For the time we lost." She looked at the screen, then at his face, searching for the men she had married. The anger in her eyes softened, replaced by a deep, weary sadness. She did not say anything, but after a long moment, she reached out and took his hand. It was not forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. Mark looked past her, through the window at his son, who was finally sleeping peacefully, the fever broken. He watched his son's chest rise and fall, no longer seeing a number in his mind, but finally seeing his own life.